What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Behind the Spotlight podcast. It's your host, Danielle J. Martin, and we are back with a new episode this week. I'm super excited to share with those of you who are listening today. We're going to be discussing something very important, and that is the unfamiliar and how you should embrace the unfamiliar. Okay, so coming into this week, your girl is coming off of a fire, impactful, inspired weekend. I just came back from Dallas, and you guys, I just experienced a lot of information, engaging with different types of entrepreneurs in Dallas. And so it was a really exciting time. I'm super excited to share the tidbits that I learned from that. And so on this podcast today, I want to talk to you guys about the unfamiliar and why you should embrace it. Okay, so I want you to get a pen and paper because we're just going to dive right into it. Yes, we're coming in hot this week. I'm super excited to share just a little bit about the things that I've learned and how I want you to take what I'm taking with you and how you can apply it to your life. Okay, so if it's your first time joining in on this video podcast, and if you're listening in, if you want to check out the YouTube version, head on over to YouTube, subscribe, of course, and make sure you tap into the video. But if it's your first time listening and tuning in, welcome. I'm super excited that you're here. I'm going to be sharing lifelong lessons with you. I'm going to be sharing books and resources, all types of self-improvement things that you can utilize and you can take advantage of today. Okay, so again, I'm no expert, but I'm super excited to share the many things that I've learned along the way. You guys, this thing called life, it is hard, okay? And it's so hard sometimes to just try to figure out what the next step is, where to move, how to move. And so I'm just here to share with you my insights, my resources and tools that I've learned, and I'm just going to share it with you. I'll also be sharing some success stories on here. You'll also hear me talk about the things that I've learned, the things that I've processed. We are really bringing to light all of the personal conversations that we have behind closed doors, that we have with our friends. I am bringing it to you on this platform, okay? Because in order to grow, we have to reveal, we have to pull back the layer, and we have to talk about it together, okay? Because there is power in community. Okay, so back to the topic for today, the unfamiliar and why this is so important for me to share with you guys. First of all, I'm a full testimony on why you should embrace the unfamiliar, okay? Because I think that sometimes we subconsciously avoid things that we are not comfortable with, that we're unsure of, or we really try to avoid the environments and rooms that we just are not familiar with because we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to approach because it is unfamiliar. It brings anxiety. It brings possible negative thoughts to your mind, fear, and just really different things in your mind on how you can possibly feel in a space where you are not familiar with it. And I understand. But I'm here to tell you that growth happens in the place where you are unfamiliar. The unfamiliar territories that you're trying to avoid right now, I encourage you to embrace them because in that space, you will grow there. You will hear me talk about this probably multiple times on my podcast because I think it's truly necessary for us to understand and really reiterate to ourselves over and over and over that in order for me to grow, I have to be in a space that I'm uncomfortable with. I have to be in a space that I'm unfamiliar with because in that space, you will learn tools and things that you can apply later on. If you stay in a comfortable space, if you stay in a comfortable territory, how do you expect to grow there? How do you expect to learn new things? How do you expect to receive education on different levels if you are staying on the same level? Okay. So going back to pulling out your paper and pen, because I want you to really, guys, take notes on what I'm telling you today, because I'm telling you it's powerful. I know that this is going to be a podcast that people are going to come back to because it is necessary for us to understand it. I think sometimes we subconsciously know, like, oh yeah, definitely, like, you definitely grow in uncomfortable spaces, but like, you think that and you know it, but just because you know something, do you really apply it with action? Okay, do you actually do it? Do you actually put yourself in a space where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before, but hey, let me go in and let me try this new skill, or let me learn something here. I think sometimes that we avoid the spaces of unfamiliarity because it requires us to be a student again. It requires us to come down from our high horse to say, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do this? And it really humbles you. So that's why unfamiliar places are necessary for your growth. Okay. So number 1, learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You can say it's a cliche statement, but really like embrace it, like invite it to your life, okay? Like really put yourself in a space to say, you know what, like I'm uncomfortable doing this. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I'm positive that it's going to be I'm positive that something new is going to come out of this because I'm forcing myself to get uncomfortable. And so think of a time where when was the last time that you actually walked up to a stranger and said, hi, my name is Danielle J. Martin. I would love to get to know you, right? Like, when was the last time that we like pulled out our childhood character and said, hey, like, what's your name? I want to get to know you, because you never know who is around you because you're staying in the same circle. You're staying in the same environments. You're staying in the same place. You're going to eat at the same restaurant. So how do you expect to learn? How do you expect to meet new people by just going to the same spaces? Okay. So learn how to embrace and pull in the uncomfort. Okay. Because you guys, I'm going to share a story with you pretty soon on why this is necessary. Your growth, your evolution, your impact literally happens when you are not in a familiar space that you can control. That's the issue. We want to have control on everything that God is trying to provide to us, but in order for him to give it to us, we literally have to let go. We have to let go of what we're trying to hold on to. And I'm here to tell you that is probably the most uncomfortable thing that you could do, is literally let go of the things that you are trying to hold on to. Let go of the things that you're trying to control. Okay? One of those things could be your future. One of those things can be letting your kids like walk in the areas that you don't want them to go in. Just not yet. And I say that very carefully, okay? I'm not saying you should just go let your kid walk in someplace that he doesn't belong, but really allow them to grow by letting them go. Like, you have to let them go. And another place that you could let go of control is not only your future, but the spaces where you are trying to be like in control all the time. Your relationship, your marriage, your friendships. When was the last time that you let someone else lead? When was the last time that you said, you know what, like, you got it? Why do we always feel like we need to be in control? Okay, something to think about. But in the unfamiliarity, you are learning so much. You are meant for spaces like this. You were meant to be in an unfamiliar territory because you are a trailblazer, okay? Like, you are an overcomer. So before you go in thinking like, I don't know what I'm doing, how am I supposed to do this? Or what does it look like? Go in knowing that God is with me, number 1. Number 2, he has already set out the plans for your life. So why would he give you something that you are not able to handle? We have to really remind ourselves about this, you guys, because we say, okay, God, give me the faith, let go and let God. But are you really letting go? Are you really letting him have control over your life? And in order for you to know that is when you sacrifice the thing that you want to hold on to. Y'all, I recently made a huge commitment and change in my life that I literally had to wrestle with, pray over. I had to have my friends pray over me. I mean, literally, I had to say, God, in order for this to happen, I need you to show up. Because I don't even have the strength to do this task that you're asking me to do for this long, right? But it was interesting because I wasn't fearful about it. I wasn't worried that I couldn't do it. If anything, I knew that I could do it. And that's probably what scared me. Then it made me think about all the other areas in my life that I am trying to control without him. And so, again, this is for anyone who can think of the things that scare you the most is probably the things that you really need to let go. Okay? In essence of saying that if you know you can do something, if you know you can go walk up to this stranger, if you know you can trust God in this area, really let it go. Don't even think twice about it and just know in your mind, like, okay, God, you got it. Now, okay, you may say, well, Danielle, you just said that you couldn't do it or you had to have, your friends pray over you. That's because I know that down the line of this task and this assignment that I'm going to be tested. And in that moment, that is when I need strength. In that moment, that is when I need to be reminded of who our God is. Like in that moment, when times of tribulations is coming, I need to be reminded in that moment, because I don't know when I'm going to get tested. I don't know when that test is coming. It could be tomorrow. It could just show up 2 weeks from now. I mean, any moment I could literally just be tested to say, okay, let's see how you do. You could have a great day, but let's see if you go against my assignment. That is when I need that prayer to come in. That is when I need that strength of being reminded that okay, I remember your assignment, so I'm letting go. Okay, so point number 2. When it comes to the unfamiliar territory, you have to not be afraid to start as an amateur. Okay, and I say that, okay, let me, bring into this story what I was trying to say. So, you guys, when I say getting familiar with the unfamiliar is when your girl transitioned into this new job. I talk about this all the time, but it's so key for you to understand where I really was. So I'm going to try my best to explain this really well. So going from, a mindset of I'm going to be a news anchor for my whole life, right? Understanding that nothing can change my mind on where I'm trying to go at all. And so when this new opportunity came about, in my mind, automatically, I said no. I could not even picture myself coming out of something that I knew I was supposed to be in. I couldn't imagine in that time. Okay, so listen carefully. I knew that if any other opportunity came, I was like, no, because this is where I'm supposed to be. I can't see myself doing anything else. I just can't. And so I will be honest even more that did I ask God about that? It was more so my ego of this is where I want to be. Okay, and this is where, in essence, we throw God's name on it to say yeah, this is where he wants me to be and call it him, right? But it's really our own thoughts. That is a different video for a different day. Okay. Anywho, so to get approached with this opportunity of to be a TV host. It's not like I was leaving TV completely, but to do it in a different environment, to do it in a new territory that I had no idea of what it was like. To get approached to say, okay, we want you to be a TV host for a financial company that talks about retirement. I'm used to talking about different topics every day. And at the age I'm at, why or how would I know information about retirement? Not saying I can't learn it, but in that space, I was so closed-minded in what I wanted, my ego wanted, and I was so worried about what people would say. I was so worried about being called out as like, oh, she wasn't going to make it. I was so worried about the world in essence that I never asked God in that time, what do you want me to do? Right? Until down the line, when I was in the news industry, I got approached an offer, right? In the time to do a lifestyle show. Remind you guys, listen carefully. Remind you that that's always what I wanted to do, was a lifestyle show. And so it's interesting because around the time that I was searching for something else, I was, applying in different areas, in different places, in different states. And so I was getting offers, but even in those offers, God kept showing me over and over and over that I don't want you to move at all. And so it's interesting because I would get everything in that offer I wanted. I mean, like, you can start in the morning, you can have your lifestyle show, you can, the raise was well, like financially, everything in the offer was everything I wanted, but there was always something missing. And it required me to sacrifice, my podcast. It required me to sacrifice, something else I was involved in. It required me to take away the gifts that God has given me. Anytime you are presented with an offer and you are not allowed to use the gifts that God has given you, I'm telling you, honey, it is not worth it. It doesn't matter what price you are offered. If you are not allowed to literally gift the world with the gift that God has given you, you better let that go. You better let it go. And so that is when I saw literally God was like working and talking to me, because he was like, my child, you want all of this, but it's really not what you want. He kept saying that it's really not what you want, because if you get that, you will be satisfied temporarily, but over time, it's going to fail you. So I need you to go in this space, because in this space, I will be there. In this space, I will talk to you. In this space, I will literally wrap my arms around you. So going back to, even in the space I was in the news industry, getting all these different offers at the company I was at, they even offered me everything I was looking for. But still in that, my spirit was convicted. It was like, okay, it's time for me to go. And so it literally required me to let go of something I loved. Y'all, hear me. It required me to let go of something I loved for something I did not know. But I was confident in where God was taking me, because even in the interview process, let me just tell you where I'm at now. It's interesting how God shows up, but where I'm at now, even in the interview process, you guys, he gave me a sign. And I'll never forget that. First of all, I still see that sign every day. And so I remember, going to the interview, and I remember praying before I went, and I said, God, if this is really you, hopefully this is not my thoughts talking, because you really have to understand the difference between your thoughts and what God is saying, okay? So what yourself is saying, those are two different things, right? So I literally said, show up and show out. Like, show up. I need to see a physical thing. I need to see it, because y'all, my faith was really weak back then, so I needed signs. I'm like, come on, right? And when I say he showed up and showed out, it was like, I got you. I got you. Like, literally hands threw up in the air. And it's so interesting that like we as a people, and God bless our hearts, because he literally gives us the desires of our hearts. But it's like, who are we to test God? Who are we to say, show up and show me this, right? Now, thank God we have a graceful God for him to do that, because, honey, the way that he be asking you and me to show up and show out for the things that he's asking us for, and he's like, how many times I got to ask you? I'm just saying. So going back to the story of being challenged and being offered, really the difference between like knowing what is of God and knowing what you want, you have to understand the difference. And so coming into this new territory of where I'm at, first of all, I'm doing everything I even imagine and some, right? First of all, I got my podcast. I'm still able to do something like this on this platform, on this caliber, and freely. And so to think about, if I decide, you know what, I want the satisfaction to say I'm still in the news industry to keep me. Oh, honey, it would just look different. It would just look different, right? And so who would know like what it would look like even if I stayed in that space and still did this? Would I speak the same? Would I move the same? Would I present the same? Like all of these things. And so I know that where I'm supposed to be is currently where he needs me to be, because in this unfamiliar territory, you guys, first of all, I'm coming up on my 1 year of being at Advisors Excel. Oh my gosh. First of all, I'm super blessed. Okay. And to see the transformation of where I was then and who I am now, snaps off to God. Okay. Like snaps off, because honey, Jesus, let me not get emotional here, because when you just think about the goodness of God and where you could have been versus where you are, it's like, it gets you all just emotional, because it's a very serious thing, you guys. Like, ooh. All right. So it's almost 1 year since I've been where I'm at. I'm super blessed because in this space, in this territory, first of all, I learned how to become a student again. And I think that is what we are fearful of. We are fearful of being in a space that we don't know. We are afraid to say like, I don't know. Or we're afraid to be in a space where it really requires you to ask questions and to humble yourself and to say, hey, like, I don't know what's going on. How do I maneuver in this space around different people? Because it's different types of people, right? Like where you are going, the unfamiliar place is different. Everything is different. It requires you to learn a new language. Unfamiliar territories require you to learn new language, because the old you can't go with you, like at all. Like the old you cannot go with you. So you have to learn something new. You have to not be afraid to be a student again. You can't be afraid to just say, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this looks like. Okay. So in unfamiliar places, that is where you learn who you need to be in these new levels. Okay. Because how do you expect to grow to a new version of you, the best you, if you are staying in your same environment? Like they say, you are who your friends are. You are who your circle is. Like that is a real statement. Like I'm learning more and more that as you grow, if you're becoming the smartest person in your circle, you must move around. Must. Okay. And so with that, you have to remember to embrace the unknown. Embrace like learning how to be a great teammate. Embrace learning how to take ownership when it's time for you to take ownership, right? Learn how to work with other people. And most importantly, you guys, learn how to not rush the process. If I learned anything in this last year, oh, Jesus, like literally, God had to teach me patience and to release control. Release control. I'm telling you guys, when you really embrace the unfamiliar, it will launch you to the place that you were called to be. It will launch. So the things that you're worried about, the things that you're afraid, the FOMO, that feeling, honey, that is your flesh talking. You are not missing out on anything. And so even being reminded, because God has even continued to remind me that you can continue to like this platform and you can continue to receive likes and receive compliments, but I'm going to continue to keep you in this space of unfamiliarity because it requires you to lean on me. Because anytime you start to look up and you start to look at the worldly things and you take your eye off of me, this whole thing will crumble. And so that's why I stay in this humble heart of mine, because without it will ruin me. And you don't want that to ruin you. So if you're continuing to take notes, I want to encourage you to don't be afraid to start as an amateur. So in this new space at AE, right, at Advisors Excel, it required me to go back to being a student. It required me to literally ask questions and be in a space as if I was in college again, because I'm not an expert yet, right? I'm not an expert in this space. And so in order for me to be this great teammate and host that I know that I can be, I must learn the language. I must learn the game. I must understand how do we maneuver? How do we come together as a team? And when is it time for me to take ownership? And even recently, I had the opportunity to present an idea and be even graced with the trust of my supervisor to say, you can take it, right? But if I was 2 months in, if I was 1 month in, and I'm coming with all these different ideas, honey, you were still a rookie. You still got to sit out, right? And so it's so interesting because I remember even too, when I first started, I remember there was a time where I felt like I wasn't being used, or I felt like my ideas were not as embraced as others, right? And so it's so interesting because I remember Michael used this analogy of, being a freshman on a football team. And so, and just like any team, it doesn't have to be football, but just that, any team, when you get to college, you're playing and everything. But, I guess from a football standpoint, because he used to play football, he thought about the times and continues to think about, certain NFL players that come from college. Not all of them start. You got to sit out a whole year. You got to literally show the coach and your advisor and your super advisor that you are ready to play this game. And so when I heard that analogy, I was like, oh, this is my rookie season. This is my freshman year, And so, but even within my year, you guys, I was able to do so many things, but I'm just saying with that analogy, it just really made me put things in perspective of you can't go into an unfamiliar territory and be ready to take charge. It's not your time yet. It's not your time to launch. It's not your time to be seen. It's your time to learn, to grow. And so in this space, I'm encouraging you to do not be afraid to start as an amateur. To start as a person that doesn't know. Don't be intimidated, because you have the room to mess up. You literally have space to do whatever you need to do to get out your kinks. Do whatever you want. Whoo, y'all. I remember my first retirement show. Lord Jesus, let us pray, because that growth was real. Okay. And to just see my team come around and really have grace for me. That's a blessing. Okay, so with that, my last point that I want you to remember for today is be a lifelong learner. So I read this in a book and it said, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. So what you learned in school is great. Take it with you, of course. But what you are learning now in the real world, in reality, is up to you. And it's up to you to search for it. You are not going to find what you're not searching for. Like, you're not. And so it's interesting that sometimes people are like, I don't know where to get it. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. You will attract the things that you are looking for. If you want to learn a new skill, if you want to learn how to elevate in a new language, in a new space, are you reading? What does your vocabulary look like? If you want to start a business, are you reading business books? Do you know how to put together a business plan? Do you know the right banks to go to? Like, y'all, we are in a space and a time where education is free. Like, education is free. Like, you have to go search for it. But you can't expect something to come to you if you are not searching for it at all. So be a lifelong learner. And then lastly, like, I was listening to this podcast by Teray Roberts. First of all, shout out to him because the Called podcast is amazing. So if you haven't listened to it, another resource for you, go listen to the Called podcast by Teray Roberts. He drops gems every time. And so he mentions in his recent podcast that champions are just getting started when the average person quits. I was like, okay, I got you. So with the unfamiliar territory, as you're learning to embrace it, don't quit on yourself, because you know why? You owe it to yourself and the new version of you to keep going. You owe it to her. You owe it to him. So keep going. And so as you are pushing through that tension, as you're pushing through the adversity and everything that's trying to come against you, that is when a champion is born, is when you keep going. So you can't give up on yourself, because in order for you to see the results on the other side, honey, you got to keep going. And even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't want to get up and work out, even when you don't want to get up and read, even when you don't want to get up and write that business plan, you have to keep going. That 1% will put you over the 80% of people that are expecting it to just come to them. You got to work when no one's working. You got to write when no one is looking. You got to perform and produce and do the things that you need to do when everyone is sleeping. Y'all, I encourage you to go back and listen to it, because this is the episode of the year. Okay? So embrace the unfamiliar territory, because in that space, you will grow and blossom and become everything that you are searching for. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're searching for something. So thank you for tuning in, but that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for getting through this podcast. I hope you learned something. And if you liked the video version, like, subscribe, and comment below on what you learned, what you're going to take away from this. And if you're listening to the audio version, I encourage you to rate, review, and share it. If you're taking away something from this, someone else can too. Okay? So I hope you guys had a great day, and see you next week.